All right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started now. My name is Colin Glover. I'm the senior analyst here at Sera-Brynn, and I run our compliance and audit division. We're out of Suffolk, Virginia, down in the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area. Hopefully you've come here before. Also on the line, I have Sam Morthland, who is our Director of Federal Services and the Executive Vice President. He's been attending a lot of the meetings up in the DC area, so he'll be able to provide some insight on that at the end. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we're talking about cybersecurity maturity model certification. In particular, we're going to be talking about version 0.6, which came out on November 7th. Hopefully you had a chance to see the previous versions. It's changed a lot from version 0.4, which had a lot of controls, and we'll talk about all that as we move forward. Covering down on everything to make sure that we still have a good idea of where we are. Again, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, CMMC, is a new requirement, initially kicked about this past summer at the DoD level, and one that we expect to see rolled out beginning next summer of 2020. It may or may not replace DFARS 252.204-7012, DFARS 7012. It may be in addition to it, or it may be an update to the DFAR. And hopefully at the end, Sam can address that a little bit more. It is based on the capability maturity scale. So part of it is capability and part of it's maturity. Both big benefits right there. The intent is that at the RFP, you're going to have go, no go. There's still a lot of questions about that. Still a lot of uncertainty how that's going to flesh out over the next year to 18 months. And it does require an audit by an external organization. It will be a private organization conducting these. And how that's going to be contracted, I'm not 100% sure at yet. Again, this is not new information. We've seen it. Who's subject to CMMC? Right now, everybody within the industrial base will be subject to the CMMC. Whether you have classified or unclassified contracts, whether you're providing chairs and desks to high-end jet turbines, you'll have some level of CMMC. If all you do is provide desks or other services, you may be at that CUI or that CMMC level 1. If you have some advanced non-CUI, you're likely to be at level 2, but we're not sure on that yet. For those that hold controlled unclassified information, those that have been subject to DFARS 7012, you're likely going to be at a level 3. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then levels 4 and 5, those are still a lot of questions regarding that. We don't know exactly who is going to be subject to levels 4 and 5 at this time. Next, and we'll hit it again, but in December, early December, the next version of CMMC will address levels 4 and 5. All right, process is required, and again, this is from the latest version 0.6 of CMMC. And we'll spend a bit of time on this, and this is the other part of the maturity model. Again, you have capability and maturity. So maturity levels, if you're a maturity level 1, there's no maturity processes regarding it. You just have to have those capabilities in place. At level 2, you have to be documented. And in particular, that system security plan and the plan of action and milestones shows up in maturity level 2 of the CMMC. Those are important. Level 3 means you have to actually use your policy, whether it be the system security plan or other policies you've developed. There's got to be some amount of checking that the policy you've written is in place and that you're actually adhering to that policy. Level 4 is ensuring that upper management becomes involved. And level 5 is more of that continuous improvement. To a certain extent, this does follow the ISO standards for improving your program. And again, at that level 3, at level 2 and 3, we're really starting to get into documentation and ensuring your documentation is there. from our point of view, from the auditing or advising perspective, assessing perspective, our first step is ensuring that your system security plan addresses all of the requirements adequately. And then we're going to review your system against that system security plan. So ensuring that you're actually following those policies that you have in place is what we're looking for. Even if there's a drift, that may be a ding against your whole program. So what you write is what you should have in place. And a little bit more, this was taken from version 4 of the CMMC. Level 1, basic cybersecurity. Level 2, getting to some of those good best practices. Level 3, again, is 800-171. You're going to keep seeing that. Now, one key here, and this was talking with the DoD, is level 3 is probably not going to stop that advanced persistent threat. That is the DoD's responsibility. Your responsibility is to stop against basic malicious activity. Advanced persistent threats may have a way around level 3. Level 4, we start getting to the high end of elements. Level 4 and 5 are both going to be fairly in-depth and require significant change in most folks' networks. Again, though, just about everybody's going to be at that level 3 level. All right, version 0.6 came out on November 7th. It only addressed level 1 through 3. Again, they've stated that level 4 and 5 will be addressed in the next release coming out in early December. It is generally based on 171. Level 1 follows the FAR that came out several years ago, and it's 15 to 17 controls. Level 2 is another subset, and then level 3 is 110 controls, plus 21 additional controls. If you have 171 implemented already, you're going to be well on your way to hitting all the controls of CMMC level 3. So that's a good thing for most of us. CMMC level 2 focuses on intermediate cyber hygiene, and it really, my review of it is just a stepping stone between 1 and 3. I've seen nothing definitive which states how level 2 is going to be rolled out or where it's going to be required at. So, all right. Again, there's 21 additional controls to 171. That's the major difference right there. I think there was 7 at level 2 and 14 at level 3, or vice versa. Some of the major highlights from those additional controls. The first one is CUI management. You have to label all the CUI and have procedures for handling the CUI. All of our clients typically have a CUI management plan. If they don't, they do when we leave. And the idea behind that is CUI has to have special handling caveats associated with it, and to allow folks to understand the data they're handling. Logging. So 171 requires logging under the audit and logging caveat, but there is nothing in 171 that says you have to centralize that. So CMMC level 3 requires that, or level 2 or 3, requires that you centrally manage all of your logging. Incident response, there's some more specific guidance on what's required to do when you do incident response, such as root cause analysis, better event reporting, those kinds of things. A new category for CMMC is data backups. So 171 required that you maintain the confidentiality of your backups. It didn't say you had to have backups. CMMC says you have to have backups. And importantly, they are offline and off-site backups. I think that with ransomware and other disasters, having those offline backups are essential to a good cybersecurity program. DNS control. If you follow the news over the past couple of years, DNS has been a major pathway for various breaches, so you have to implement DNS filtering. And then email sandboxing. Quite a few modern-day email appliances already provide this, or a third party can certainly provide this for you. Again, just a really good idea for a cybersecurity program. One of the cool parts about the CMMC and what they're going to provide is better explanations. at level 1 and 2. I'm not sure they'll provide that for level 3 or 4 or 5, but they have guaranteed that they're going to provide better explanations at level 1 and 2. The examples here are fairly important. You know, so access control information posted or processed on publicly accessible information systems, the basic one, or one of the basic ones. You're a head of marketing for your company and want to become better known by your customers. So you decide to start issuing press releases about your company projects. Your company gets federal contract information, or FCI, from doing work for the federal government. All good stuff. So you only allow certain employees to post to the website. This is much more helpful than a lot of the additional or supplemental information, and will allow everybody to get a pretty good understanding of what the requirement of the control is. Now, if you noticed, and I'll skip back one, it says your company gets federal contract information, or FCI. This slide does not say your company gets controlled unclassified information, or CUI. This is an important change in wording, in my opinion. All right. The requirement from CMMC is committed to working with the DIB sector to enhance the protection of sensitive data, federal contract information, and controlled unclassified information. So federal contract information is non-public information that's provided to you by the government. Controlled unclassified information is probably federal contract information, but I'm not sure that all federal contract information is CUI. So understanding information that you get from the government that is not public has to be protected. FCI was originally cited under the FAR, 52.204-21, which is where all the level 1 controls are. What does FCI encompass? That I really don't know at this time. It has not been well established. It has not been well regulated yet. So I think that the scope may be more significant. I think we're going to have to wait on further DoD information on how FCI is identified and treated as we move along. All right, what's next? The next public release, due in early December, will address levels 4 and 5. So if you notice over here on the right of this slide, where it says Draft NIST SP 800-171B, it lists 33 controls for 171B. If you look at level 4 and 5 on the left, we have a total of 88. So level 4 and 5 are going to be greatly expanded from what we saw in 171B. We have an additional 55 controls that are going to be showing up there. I've not seen that yet. I'm sure some folks have. I have not. But again, we'll see that coming out in early December. The finished version, draft 1.0, is still due out in January. So it's come down the wire. These are still the same valid questions. Who is paying for the costs associated with the program? It's an allowable cost. It always has been. If you look at the original DFAR or DFARS, it has been allowable cost. How's that actually going to be reclaimed or recouped? I don't know. There are some accountants and various lawyers that specialize in this, who hopefully will provide us additional information. Who's going to audit? An accreditation body will oversee the program. That's being formed right now. They had their initial meeting last week or week before, and then that accrediting body will certify commercial companies, the 3PAOs, commercial 3PAOs, who will then go into the companies and audit it. What's that going to look like? How are we going to get the auditors in there? Again, that's still to be decided. How are they going to audit all 300,000 companies? It looks like this is going to be a 5-year rollout as contracts are renewed. Newer contracts will see this. Per the last meeting, and Sam can address this, 2020 is not going to see very many contracts subject to CMMC. It's going to give everybody time to ramp up their program. Where do I find out more information? Please go visit this website. It's the DoD's Frequently Asked Question Guide. This is where the official information is. We can sit out here and pontificate all day long, but really this FAQ guide and the DoD site is where the official information is. But if you have questions, concerns, want to know more, certainly reach out to us and we'll try to help you out. What do you need to do now? And I think we've been saying this all along, and I think DoD has too. If you've not done so, implement NIST SP 800-171. As you notice, level 3 is mostly made up of 171 controls. Level 1 and 2 are also made up of 171 controls. The more that you can get that pushed out and pushed in, the better off you're going to be when it comes time to actually begin the audits. Also, the Navy has put out a requirement that if you're not 171 compliant, they can immediately take 5% off your contract. And you have 30 days post-award to validate your 171 compliance. I think other services are going to go that route as CMMC rolls out. And as my last bullet says, if you sign a contract, you've probably said that you are 171 compliant. So hopefully you don't find yourself backpedaling. All right. So at this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Sam so he can discuss a little bit more about the presentations.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Sam Worthland, and I just want to do a quick recap. Last week we had the accrediting body kickoff meeting that came in with the government. Mr. Fahey and Katie Arrington came in and spoke about what they were looking for the accrediting body to do and just kind of the program in general and how it's moving along and the time frame they're looking at getting all this done. So right now they are on schedule to have the CMMC version 1.0 out in January, followed by the accrediting body starting training. Their goal right now is the March-April timeframe, with the first certified auditors coming out in the May to June timeframe, and that will all drive when the first RFIs to contain CMMC roll out. Don mentioned FCI, as Colin mentioned, is used because companies under CMMC level 1 and level 2 cannot hold CUI. So that's why they've added that back in. So just that. But the accrediting body, sorry, jump back and forth a little bit, is still in the formation stage. The meeting after the government left had a lot of discussion because it was kind of left up to industry. So industry is still trying to figure it out. More to follow on that. And there's an aggressive timeline, as we mentioned, to have the accrediting body in place to certify the third-party auditors. That was really about it for the meeting last week. As Colin mentioned, the biggest thing is getting your cyber house in order, getting compliant with 7012 if you're already under contract for it. We've gotten a lot of inquiries from small companies on whether or not what all they have to do to get ready. And we even had some companies call that want to be DoD contractors, weren't sure how compliant they were, but it turns out if you look at FAR 20421, they're actually pretty compliant with that basic level 1 already. So a lot of companies have things in place that you probably will get credit for, if you understand what I mean by that. And just make sure you take the time to look. Let's see, we got one question. Are there going to be better definitions placed around CUI? Any company has PII for their own employees, but is that actually CUI? Okay, so basically two questions. And the definition for CUI is going to come, it's actually through the National Archives, coming down through DoD policy. And it's up to the DoD to mark what is CUI. But if you also go back into the privacy instructions, PII is CUI by definition on the existing National Archives direction. So not your own employees. You still need to protect your own PII. I mean, Colin, if you want to talk to protecting your own PII.
Yes, sir. So PII is only CUI if it's collected as part of a contract for DoD and military. PII for your employees is generally protected under state law. So you should look at that when going through that, unless you have other HIPAA or various other requirements. But to answer your question, employee PII is not protected under the CUI program.
Okay. Next question we had was, will the CMC database have a public version so that smaller primes can develop certified teams to bid on contracts? Really not our place to say this. I will tell you, in the meeting, at the accreditation body meeting, it was mentioned that the CMC certification database would be jointly held between the accrediting body and the DoD, and that my interpretation of the model is like kind of like with PMP or even CISSPs. You can go to the accrediting body, type in my name, and then you'll get my certificate number. So I would imagine there's going to be that kind of capability through the accrediting body. But again, nothing was specified. Most times, just your company-to-company relationship, because all you need is the company's certificate number once they have it. The way they did one thing that Ms. Arrington expanded on was companies' certifications would be linked to their auditor's license number, so that there's going to be a whole trail that they can track down. So if you're a company, they're going to know who audited you based on the license that they received from the accrediting body. So there's a whole way to track the certifications from start to finish. Let's see, next question was, will this affect contractors and subcontractors? The answer is yes. They've said if you're doing any business with the Department of Defense, you will need a CMMC certification. Will the prime contractor be responsible for ensuring the sub is in compliance? Will it be a self-audit? This was an area of a lot of discussion at the last meeting, in that once the program is in effect, as a prime, you just ask for your sub-certificate numbers. There's not really, that's the way you verify. It's kind of like if you think the model, this is my interpretation of this, the model is kind of like following the ISO model, is I don't turn to you and come do your ISO 9001 inspection as your prime. I may ask you for your certificate number because you've been assessed by a third-party auditor who's independent, and I'm relying on their audit. I think that's going to be the same way it's going to happen. As far as self-audits, I think every company's going to have their own self-audits, but I don't think it's prime. It's up to a prime. They may still want to ask questions through questionnaires as a good business practice. But once a certificate system is in place, a lot of that should be alleviated. Okay, let's see. What are the requirements to be an auditor? Those are going to be specified by the accrediting body. That's what they told us last week or at the meeting. So some more to follow on that. Are there any qualifications, certifications defined to be a C3 PAO? And that's all right now. The DoD is telling us, the industry, to stand by on the accrediting body. The accrediting body is going to establish the what it takes to be an auditor, what it takes with the training program. The government's going to deliver to the accrediting body the model, training materials, and how-to implementation guide. And then it's going to be up to the accrediting body from there. So we're all kind of waiting to see what the accrediting body pushes out. Okay, let's see, I got another question. If a company has an IT system certified at CMMC level 3, does that allow the company to submit proposals to solicitations for non-certified IT systems with the understanding the company will get the non-certified system certified prior to award? Okay, a lot of the controls are more than just your IT system, but if you're the prime, you're at level, let's say you're at level 3. Katie answered a question like this at the last accrediting body meeting, because it came up about relationships on, initially it's going to be upon award. So it's one of those, if you're like, I'll make an assumption, if you're at level 2 and you're bidding on a level 3 contract, that you're going to have level 3 in place by time of award. I hope that answers your question. Let's see. There's just so much. One of the things that I've been trying to do is attend as many meetings as possible, because the train is moving so fast on this. There's a lot of different information coming out. But the biggest thing is the foot stomper from DoD on down, even through us, is get yourself compliant with 800-171 now, and you'll be good to most of level 3 requirements that come out in CMMC over the next few years. Again, as Colin said, this is not going to be an all-in-one. All 300,000 people aren't going to have to get done in a year. It's going to take some time to get it done. The model they put up when they talked about most frequently last year was it took us about 5 years to get ISO 9001 throughout the DIB. So that timeline is probably pretty realistic from start until we get everybody implemented. They want to keep the momentum of the program moving forward. So that's why you're seeing this constant dialogue with industry rather than just kind of, disappearing in a black box and dropping on us later. So I think it's a good process to that to date. Anybody have any other questions? Will this be an annual certificate for a full 12-month period? Right now, last week, it's the first time I've heard it quasi-definitively. They've talked about a try every 3 years is they're going to require it. Now, devil's in the details. So there are other accreditation certifications out there that are 3 years, but you get visited once a year to look at like a third of the requirements. So by the end of the third year, every single requirement's been looked at. One of the things the DoD has been emphasizing is your relationship with your auditor is going to be a long-term relationship. I mean, you can change them, but the idea being is your auditor just doesn't come, audit you, and leave. They come and then are there to help you with your program and answer questions. They can't do the program for you because they have to maintain that objectivity to avoid any conflicts of interest. But there's a relationship there. So if you had a question about your program, you can go back to your auditor if you can't get things. So there's going to be, again, they're leaving this up to the accrediting body of how to maintain the certification, but right now they're looking at once every 3 years to answer that question. What entity will verify that companies listed on a proposal are actually certified? COs, PMs, Prime, the accrediting board. Okay, so our understanding, just in kind of the general discussion that they've had at some of these presentations, is that when your proposal is submitted by a Prime, in the proposal will be the Prime's certificate number and your sub certificate numbers, because every sub has to have it. And the key word they keep foot stomping is every. So you go down all the tiers. I have an odd feeling this won't count in your page count, but I'm sure there's going to be a list or a table that has Prime and every subcontractor with your certificate number, because they can look them all up, is the model they've been talking about. Who's going to verify it? I don't know once it hits the government side, but as a Prime, I would make sure that as one of my T's and C's kind of things, I'd have my contracting office or my contracting folks go and do a scrub of my subs certificate numbers just to make sure they're good to go, so we don't get our proposal thrown out of the window because of a mistake or an oversight. Okay, let's see. Does the accrediting body certify a firm or its actual individuals on the team that need to be, I'm sorry. Does the accrediting body certify a firm, or is it the actual individuals on the team that each need to be certified? For the accrediting body, if you're talking about the actual company's compliance with 800-171, it is the company, the firm, the program through its system security plan. And currently you're allowed to have a POAM under 7012. They were emphatic at the accreditation body meeting. There will be no POAMs. No POAMs with CMMC. It's yes or no. It's a binary. So that's one of the reasons why you got to get prepared now. Clean up your POAMs. That's the other part of the foot stompers. Get your 171 done. And for those that have an ISO kind of program that requires artifacts, make sure you have artifacts. Do monthly meetings. Capture all that stuff is what I've said at many of the presentations I've given, so that you have the same kind of artifacts to show auditors when they show up on how you're complying. Let's see. How is Rev 171 Bravo related to CMMC? We're expecting to see a lot of the 171 Bravo. Actually, Colin, why don't you talk to this one? This is you.
Sure. So right now, 171 Bravo is going to make up some part of CMMC levels 4 and 5. We can go back a bit. So let's see if everybody can see that. All right.
Yep.
Right column, it lists the 33 controls from 171B. 26 of those controls are going to be used for levels 4 and 5. And then there's going to be another 55 controls at level 4 and 5, which are coming from somewhere else. So I don't know if 171B is going to form the core, and then they're going to expound from there, or they're just going to be part of it. But yeah, 171B, it will be addressed at levels 4 and 5.
Okay. I got a clarification on the earlier question about they're worrying about not the firm, but actually the certification companies. So, like with other certifications, and Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, the individual actually goes through and gets the training and the certification, and the company carries it because that person's an employee of the company.
It depends on what certification.
Okay.
They go different ways. PCI is at the individual level. FedRAMP is at the company level. So really, it'll be up to the accrediting body to determine how that is rolled.
I think the biggest gist of all this is keep your ear to the ground, keep an eye on what's coming out. Go to the CMMC webpage, the links in the briefing. They have frequently asked question file with basic kind of questions. They also have a contact where you can ask questions and they'll reply to you. Some of those questions actually come and back populate the frequently asked question file. It's not that long, but they're getting better with it. There's also, that's where they post .6, the actual revision, and you'll see .7 should be around there, around the second week of December. Now we're going to have levels 4 and 5, so go to that web page and for that information. The listening tour panels are over. That's not saying that people aren't speaking anywhere, but they kind of moved past that because now they're into the revision process. They told us they had over 3,000 or 20, well, close to 3,000 responses to the .4, and that's what took some time to get .6 out, and the reason why it's taking, they're going to release the .7 with 4 and 5 because they wanted to take time to go through all the comments. So again, they are taking input and considering it. So it's good. If you have, even as we're going along, you still have questions, you can always, they have that contact information for the office, the CMMC office on the web page. Let's see. Oops, somebody just popped in. Let's see. How will the DoD contracts be updated? How will it only be updated in new contracts? What about old contracts? Okay, right now they've said this is all starting with new contracts. There's no backdating. That they're going to move forward. So these 5 to 10 contracts you're looking for in 2020 are going to be new contracts coming up. So again, we're back to this. If you think about it, the way they explained the logic was most contracts are on a 3-year refresh cycle, some are 5 years. So if you look in, they've set their planning horizon now for 5 years. So in that 5-year period, most contracts are going to come up for renewal. So if you're an existing contract, right now they're not talking about any kind of changing the contract language at the option years within an already awarded contract. They're talking about new contract starts, even if it's a rebid, but it's considered a new contract. And they'll add that as one of the clauses to the ongoing contract. So don't worry about currently executing contracts or like if your option year is up and you have 1 or 2 more option years, they're not going to add CMMC to it until then. Now, I will tell you, that's going to be the legal part of it, but then your KOs are probably going to be very concerned if you're not at least, because you're right now on any existing contract since what, 2015, I think, you've had to be 7012 compliant. So again, batten down the hatches, get 800-171 complete, tighten up your POAM and eliminate it. Get rid of your POAM so you're fully compliant. Now, don't wait, because the enterprise isn't going to wait, and we can't afford to have, was the number Katie always uses, is $600 billion worth of intellectual property leaving the DIB every year. That's not acceptable. Okay, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. All right, Colin, I think that's really about it. You got anything last?
No, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll continue to post and update as we can. Please visit our website and we'll have whatever we have up there. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.